Rumors about Georgia's demise have been greatly exaggerated. My God, what a beatdown they gave to Clemson. We gotta really put this into context because we're getting into a spot where Georgia is playing against teams that we think are somewhere in the same talent scale as them, and they are beating them like FCS opponents in many respects. I mean, think about Oregon a few years ago, right? And what Georgia did to that team and what Oregon has turned out to be, a team that probably makes the college football playoff, and we picked to play in the Big Ten championship. Thinking about what Georgia's done to basically everybody but Alabama the last 3 years. 42-2. The only losses are to Alabama, who's coached by Nick Saban, and they ain't coached by Nick Saban no more. All hail the new Bama, which is Georgia, and Kirby Smart, and continue to stop a mud hole in teams we think are good and walk it dry, which is really going to, for me, just underscore how great Nick Saban is as a head coach, because not only was he able to beat Georgia, he groomed the best defensive coordinator in football to be the best head coach in football after he leaves in Kirby Smart. This one was nowhere near close. I mean, it looked like Georgia had this thing under control even when it was tied at 0-0, even when they were just ahead 6-0. The defense was absolutely a brick wall that Clemson continued to smash into. And as much as I want to continue to wax poetic about a team that has won, my goodness, we're up to 40 straight regular season games in Georgia. For me, it's more about what Clemson is not and how this college football season is going to shape up for those two programs. Off the rip, Garrett Riley might not be it. Like, we're at a place where Kirby Smart is 3-0 against the Rileys. That is 2-0 against Garrett, 1-0 against Lincoln. And in two respects, they're two of the biggest games that both of those guys have ever coached, right? For Garrett Riley, it was the national championship game, got beat 6-5-7, and that offense put up a total of 188 yards. In this game, deep into the fourth quarter, we're looking at 151 total yards from the Clemson offense, and we're looking at a Garrett Riley offense that has managed to score all of 10 points in about 8 quarters of football. It's just not been going well for them, man. Like, I feel for Cade Klubnik because this is a guy who was a 5-star, but we didn't always think it was there. And then he showed out to basically send DJ Uiagalelei on his way. And he went from Brandon Streeter, coordinator, to Garrett Riley. Brandon Streeter's an analyst at Georgia. I don't think that's a coincidence now. Also was one of those dudes that Dabo had raised up and then parted ways with so he could go get the Broyles Award winner, and it ain't worked out well for them. They went 9-4 last year after starting the season 4-4, and they finished with their 5. But the way this is looking is Clemson still might be the best team in the ACC. And if Clemson wins the ACC championship, and let's say Georgia goes 11-1, but they don't win the SEC championship, Clemson will get the first round bye, and Georgia will not. It's a frequent criticism of the college football playoff format in that why are you giving conference champions a bye if they're not one of the 4 best teams? And it's quite simple. You want the conference championship game to be worth a damn, because if you know that it doesn't matter for you, you might not show up in the same way that you would if it does. You got to make that worthwhile. And that's more of a television aspect to the sport than it is a competitive aspect to the sport. But I would make the argument that college football is a business and then a sport because of how much money has gone into this. I'm also looking around and I'm going, Carson Beck showed up here wanting to win a national championship and wanting to win the Heisman Trophy. They did not have Trevor Etienne in the backfield. It did not matter. Nate Frazier, probably going to be the best spellback in college football alongside Cash Jones, who's there. I got to see Dominic Lovett throw up the hooks and also make his way onto the field. Or looking at Oscar Delp got in the action. Arian Smith is probably going to end up being the deep threat that Mike Bobo expects him to be. I just kept writing down notes, man, from this. And one of the other things I was mentioning is Clemson's defense looked elite for 2.5 quarters. And allowed just 6 points in the first half, and then the dam broke. I mean, we're talking about 34 points, and basically 28 of them coming in the third. Not basically, 28 of them coming in the third and fourth quarters. And we're talking about a Carson Beck who got started slowly, 23 of 33, 278, 2 TDs, took a sack, right? But was able to spread the wealth around. No receiver had more than 5 catches, and yet I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that had a catch, and 9 of those guys had 2 or more, just spreading it all the way around. And that defense continues to just be a monster. They started a true freshman at safety in KJ Bolden, and they didn't flinch. Malachi Starks is back there playing safety like a wide receiver, making his first interception of the season. A Thorpe Award finalist last year, trying to win it this year, and he's got a damn good chance of doing that. London Humphreys had a great coming out game. 2 catches, 63 yards, and a TD to really break this thing in half. And again, you didn't get anything else from the run game save Nate Frazier, who had 11 for 83, but one of those was a 40-yard dash. I'm looking around at this Clemson offense, and I'm going, this can't stand. You got to fix this. You got to find a way, because Cade Klubnik, on the one hand, could not get time to throw, and when he did, he didn't look good doing it, man. Like in the first half, we're talking about 54 yards on 7 of 12, and 36 of those came on one damn play. 18 of 27 for 142 with a pick and 0 TDs in this game. Phil Maffa could hardly get going. 15 rushes for 60 yards. Georgia basically threw down a marker today about being a national championship caliber team. And I think right now, that's what they are, right? I think we're all in agreement about Ohio State and Georgia being the 2 best teams in the sport going into the preseason, and Georgia solidifies that against a top 15 opponent and a Clemson program that I still think is going to be pretty damn good. I'm not sure what to make of Georgia Tech. I'm not sure what to make of Florida State. We'll find out more about Miami this afternoon. But right now, there is a world of difference between the top of the SEC and the top of the ACC, and this is yet another example of how and why. Nazir Stackhouse went down for a little bit. Didn't matter. They were getting after them, caving in the middle of your offensive line. They were getting upfield. Michael Williams was everywhere he wanted to be. Smile Monday was making things hard on slot receivers. We're talking about Brenningstool being just taken completely out of the game in the first half, finally coming on a little bit in the second half, but he only had 3 catches for 26 yards. I mean, we're talking about a Clemson team that's not bad. That's the thing. Like, it would not shock me to find out that AP voters still have them as a top 25 team. We'll see what I think after SC and LSU play on Sunday night, because we got so much more football to play here today. But I think it needs to be said, man, right now, what are you going to do with Georgia? And Coach Saban actually had this right, and I think this is the stance that many of us should take from here on out. Until somebody beats Georgia, Georgia's going to win the SEC championship, right? I think Ohio State has the roster to do it, and I think they can hold up. But in as far as executing, Georgia doesn't hide from anybody. They don't hide their signals. They don't really need the helmet-to-headset technology because they got a cerebral guy in Carson Beck back there who didn't really look sharp. That's the other thing about this Georgia football team. They didn't look sharp all day. They didn't come out like they had been playing football for the last 3 months. They came out like a team that looked like they're playing preseason football for them and still handed Clemson their head. And Dabo Swinney was beside himself on the sideline. And all these times that they're getting stopped on 3rd and short, and he doesn't want to go for it on 4th and short because he knows that all he's doing is delaying the inevitable. It just felt like at one point or another the dam was going to break, and when it finally did, there was nothing that Clemson could do about it. And if Georgia's the kind of team that they've been for the last basically 4 years, where they can just lean on you and lean on you and lean on you, you're going to collapse under the pressure. This was an outstanding performance by Georgia. I mean, it's given me a lot to think about how I'm going to evaluate the SEC and how I'm going to evaluate other teams as we talk about those teams at the top, right? 1 through 5, 1 through 4, and eventual conference champions. I got to say, though, Garrett Riley, you got to get this figured out, man. Otherwise, all we got is Kirby Smart owning you. That's all we got. It doesn't matter. Anything else doesn't matter because you've been to the national championship game. You had a chance to go get a W in a game where you were a wild underdog, and Clemson lost by 31 points. That is a world of difference between a team that expects to be in the playoff and another team that expects to be in the playoff. And this, I think, is why so many people are so down on parity in college football. I'm going, well, if it's just up to y'all, we wouldn't play any football at all. But I love seeing these sorts of results so we can unpack them and analyze them and get underneath them and find out why people are good And also, this is going to pass the eye test. I mean, this was on network television. A lot of people saw this game. A lot of people are going to vote in their Associated Press and coaches polls based on what they see in this game, not knowing what Oklahoma State might do against South Dakota State. Although when I last checked that game, they had that game well in hand. Colorado, that's what you're supposed to do to a top-ranked FCS opponent. We'll have more to say about this on the live show tonight. Please check back. But I needed to tell you right now, man, it's Georgia's world in the South.